Shalom Aleichem. My name is Rabbi Adam Dubin. I work for the RCA in Manhattan. This week's Parsha, as we know, is Parshat Re'eh, and one of the key halachas that we learn in the Parsha, of course, is that we should not eat blood. The pasuk actually is in the Perek Yod Beis pasuk Chav Gimel, and it says, "Rak chazak levilti oichel adam ki adam hu hanefesh v'lo sochal nefesh im habasu." Says that you should be strong, be resolute, and not to eat the dam, for the dam is the life force, the nefesh, and you must not eat it while it is still alive. So Rashi says in the pasuk, "Rak chazak belibi oichel adam," that you should be strong, be resolute, not to eat the blood. You can infer from here that the Bnei Yisrael used to eat blood. Therefore, the Torah found it necessary to say, "Be strong." These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon ben Azai says that the statement comes only to caution you, to teach you the extent to which you should strengthen yourself in your observance of the Torah mitzvahs. Or if the Torah needed to strengthen you to observe the prohibition against eating dam, which is easy to guard yourself against, it's because a person has no desire for it. Then how much more so when you must strengthen yourself to observe all the other mitzvahs? The Rashbam says that the dam becomes absorbed within the organs of the body. And therefore, the Torah promises that a person will be strong even if he doesn't eat the dam. In his Perish on the pasuk, Rashi explains why the Torah chose to stress the chazak belibi. You should be strong in your heart not to eat the dam, rather than simply saying, don't eat it. However, Rashi's comments prompt a couple of questions. Why did Rashi give two different explanations and not deem one of them sufficient? Of course, Rashi is always looking for the simple pshat, and he often gives more than one explanation. And usually when there's one explanation, when he gives two, it's because at least one of them has something lacking. And why did Rashi cite the authors of these different opinions, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon ben Azai, in the contrast to his usual practice of not providing references? The prohibition against eating dam does not appear for the first time here, as we know. It says in Parshat Re'eh. Indeed, the Rambam in Sefer Mitzvah maintains that this Isser is mentioned no less than 7 times throughout the Torah. So Rashi was troubled. Why does the Torah stress it here, the additional need to be strong, not to eat the dam, rather than just, as in previous times, mentioning not to eat it? Since the Bnei Yisrael learned the practice of eating dam in Mitzrayim, as the Rambam says in the Morim. Why is the prohibition emphasized here again, 40 years after the Bnei Yisrael left Mitzrayim? And this led Rashi to conclude that even here, some 40 years later, the Bnei Yisrael still used to eat dam excessively, and therefore the Torah found it necessary to say here to be chazak belibi, be strong in your heart. Nevertheless, Rashi was not satisfied with this simple answer, because it still doesn't explain why the Torah failed to stress the need to be chazak belibi when mentioning the prohibition in the first instance. It's unreasonable to suggest that the Bnei Yisrael ignored repeated warnings against eating dam and that they still used to eat it a lot after 40 years. And also, at this point, Bnei Yisrael, that generation that left Mitzrayim, had already died. So why should their children, who were not directly influenced by the Mitzri culture, have such a strong desire to eat the dam and ignore HaKadosh Baruch Hu's repeated warnings against doing so? Due to all these difficulties, Rashi has brought an additional explanation. That's the teaching of Rabbi Shimon ben Azai. And the Bnei Yisrael were not actually eating dam at this point. And the statement that this comes only to caution you and to teach you to the extent that you should strengthen your observance in Torah mitzvahs. However, Rashi cites this only as a secondary explanation, since it has an even greater drawback from Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. For, as we know, b'derech pshat, it's difficult to accept that a very specific mitzvah to be chazak belibi, that you should be strong against eating the dam suggest that the Bnei Yisrael did have a taiva for eating the dam, contrary to what Rabbi Shimon ben Azzi had suggested. In order to indicate the why these two divergent opinions arose, Rashi cites that their respective authors, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon ben Azzi. In contrast to some rabbinic opinions that allow a loose translation of the pasuk, here it seems that the clauses and the conditions may be extrapolated beyond the precise case in which they are recorded. Rabbi Yehuda maintained that the words of the pasuk are to be interpreted, to be understood exactly as written, as we see the Gemara Masech Pesachim, Daf Chaf Aleph Amid Beis. And consequently, we can appreciate why, in our case, Rabbi Yehuda rejected Rabbi Shimon ben Azzi's interpretation to be chazak belibi, to apply to all mitzvahs in the Torah. Rabbi Shimon ben Azzi, on the other hand, was famous for teaching that you should run and perform an easy mitzvah. We see in Pirkei Avos, in the fourth parak. So we can appreciate why Rabbi Shimon ben Azzi was sympathetic to the interpretation of our pasuk that stressed the prohibition of eating dam as an easy mitzvah, because a person has no taiva for it, and how nevertheless the Torah highlights its importance, that we should be strong, chazak belibi, we should be strong in our heart not to eat the dam. Further, Rabbi Shimon ben Azzi used to say, one mitzvah leads to another, which explains why he taught, in our case, that the additional care, the prohibition of eating dam, would lead to additional care in other mitzvahs as well. I think there's one instance, one idea of against eating the dam, and the purposes that we can render out for it can lead us to a lot of other interpretations, a lot of other mitzvahs as well, similar to Rabbi Shimon ben Azzi, what his idea, but we can reflect it in all other aspects of our lives. As we know, we should always run to do a mitzvah. We don't know what Kodesh Baruch Hu's cheshbonos are as to what's an easy mitzvah, what's a hard mitzvah. We should always run to do our best to try to do the mitzvahs and as quickly and as well as possible. And we're coming up in faster than we think on the Yom Narayim, and one of the mitzvahs that we think about trying to do the Hiddur the best way possible is Lulav Esrog. You know, people spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars sometimes on an esrog, but you can also buy one that is only. I mean, I don't know what the prices are this year. I haven't started to look yet, but typically the past few years they range in price from around $30 or so, at least where I live in Passaic, up into a couple $100. So you can end up to say that well, if I can fulfill the mitzvah with an esrog that's $30, maybe I should only spend $30. On the other hand, maybe the esrog that I should use is that's the most beautiful mitzvah, or the most beautiful esrog, is a few $100s. If I can afford the more expensive esrog, maybe I should buy it because it is more hiddur. So based off of this understanding, it seems to be that even though it seems like an easy mitzvah to buy an esrog, you just take the arba minim, to take them together and shake them, as we know. That it shouldn't make such a big difference as to whether the esrog is more mahudar or less mahudar, as long as it ends up to be a kosher. But perhaps we can learn from here that since we don't know which mitzvahs are easier, which mitzvahs are harder, really, we should run to do the mitzvah in the best way possible. It seems to be we should do it the Mahajim way, which if we can afford a more expensive esrog, perhaps we should run to do that. And again, it's just one nakuda that I see as well, that we can learn from the mitzvah against eating the dam, as we see here in Parshas Re'eh. I wish everyone a good Shabbos.